Hello, welcome back to the devil on the G string. I am terrified. I was awakened by the sound of a heavy iron door closing. My head ached. After a short while, my vision came into focus. Hashimoto wore a faint smile and cracked his fingers. I was in what seemed to be a basement. It was a square room and looked to be about 30 feet to a side. A stifling silence weaved together with the stagnant air of the room. There were no windows, and the only source of light was a naked bulb hanging from the ceiling. I withstood the pain and opened my mouth. Where am I? He shrugged. There were no other captives here. The only other things I can see right now are the cigarette butts scattering the floor and the two female corpses laying among them. Their clothes had been ripped apart, and their hollow eyes looked in my direction. Did you do this? My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it. It was a clear indication of my fear of what was about to happen to me.
ここはクラブの地下でな。有利って聞いたことないか?
It's one of the bigger clubs in the downtown area. As I recall, it's located on the outskirts of Central Boulevard. I get it. You wait here and ambush people that are looking for a way out.
ご名答。1階の東側の出口はこの国の外に通じてるからな。
What? Hashimoto snickered. I checked out my surroundings once more. A bottle of sake, a lighter, and an ashtray were scattered across a table near the wall. A businessman lay collapsed over it. He was dead, of course. Do you think you'll get away with all this?
許される? 誰に?
The police, of course. You may be minors, but if you go off and do something this insane, well, you know what's in store, right? Hashimoto just snickered again. The laugh contained a hint of pity, but it was easily dwarfed by the ridicule. How are you going to get away this time, huh? The entire area is completely surrounded by the police.
逃げねえよ。
What?
ここは俺たちの国なんだから、逃げる必要はねえんだ。
I looked up to glare at Hashimoto.
俺たちのリーダーはここら一帯に治外法権を要求しているんだ。
Mind translating that for me? I have no idea what you're talking about.
わからねえかな。封鎖状態にあるセントラル街とその上空はもう日本じゃねえってことだよ。
I was at a loss for words.
警察権力の介入と日本の法律による取り締まりは受けない。まさに夢の国だろ。
There was no hint of lies or deception in Hashimoto's voice as he spoke with fervor. Instead, they seemed to be filled with deep faith and conviction. They had a twist of ecstasy in them. The result was the spitting image of some crazed cultist. Do you really believe all that?
じゃあ浅井はある日突然セントラル街が戦場になるなんて話をされて真に受けるか?
There was nothing I could say to that.
いいか浅井。俺の親父はよ、俺とは違ってクソ真面目に学園の教員やってたんだよ。教頭になるって結構すごいことらしいぜ。それがよ、白鳥の親父にはめられたばっかりに何もかもおかしくなっちまった。うちには毎日のようにテレビ屋が来るし、母親は実家に帰っちまうし、妹は小学校でいじめられてんだ。
I had a similar experience myself, so I could understand his grief to a certain extent.
そんな時によ、ほいっと拳銃渡されたら、つい人でも殺したくなるだろ。
However, I couldn't sympathize with his base nature. To a kid in the prime of his youth, pride is everything. You can't let people look down on you. If someone pulls one over on you, you return the favor. If someone screws up your family and get back at the world by screwing up everyone else's family. Mao understands that part of the human psyche rather well. Okay, but just think for a minute. There's no way you could make your own country.
作れるさ。
First, what would you do about food? You may have enough for another week or so, but what then? Plus, if you break off relations with Japan, they're going to cut off electricity to the area, not to mention the fact that your guns are going to run out of ammunition eventually. And when that happens, this little country of yours will be smashed into the dust.
魔王が何とかしてくれる。
It's not an answer. You guys are just being used.
みんな最初はそう言うよ。でもことここに至ってそんなこと言うやつは一人もいねえ。
Well, yeah. At this point, they've already committed numerous crimes and offenses. They had no choice but to trust Mao now that things have come this far. I read in a book once that corrupt religious and cult leaders attempt to mold situations in which their believers can no longer turn back. Along Central Boulevard today, anyone who wasn't contributing to the violence was immediately targeted. Thus, because of the circumstances, people had to kill others lest they risk being killed themselves. And I'm still in shock that all this occurred amongst children. Obviously, the police are in shock too. I was overcome with a dizzy spell. The absolute cruelty of my brother's plan left me in despair.
俺を説得して助かろうとって無駄だ。
Yeah, I know. We weren't even friends at school, really.
そうそう。お前の友達は今どうなってると思う？
Ichi?
今上の階で伸びてるよ。仲間になるとか言っといていきなり襲いかかってきやがった。見え見えだっての。マジでバカだよ。あのチビ。
Yeah, that about sums him up. My voice was so empty, I surprised even myself. So he's still alive?
ああ。これからみんなで面白い見せ物しようって話になってんだ。
He spoke with glee.
公開処刑ってやつ？ほら、ネットの裏サイトとかで中東の兵士が惨殺されるあれ、あるだろ？
I'm aware of it.
今いろんな残虐シーンをよ、ネットにアップしてるんだよ。すると世界中の人間が俺たちを恐怖するってわけだ。
They've entirely left the realm of sanity. I steeled myself for what was to come. So, you're planning on making Iichi the victim of whatever sick bull you can think of?
お前もな。
He nodded without a second of hesitation.
悪いことだってのは知ってる。でも、悪こそが人を救ってくれるってようやく理解したんだ。
Well, you and I may be small fries, but there's one thing I think you ought to know.
え？
I will always be the bigger fry. You're just a tool to be manipulated by a greater evil known as Mao. You're not even trying to think for yourself. I thought back to my late father. A true villain is one that neither follows nor flatters anyone, a being of absolute solitude. I never really understood that until the last minute either, so don't go running your mouth about things you haven't realized. Hashimoto suddenly came flying at me. Oh well. The anger on his face was on a different level than before. His foot left the ground with sharp force. I tried to block with my hand, but my body wouldn't move like I wanted it to. By the time my brain had time to recognize the dull pain, I had already been knocked against the wall. I was still conscious, but I couldn't breathe.
もう一遍言ってみな!
He delivered a vicious blow to my abdomen. I was unable to form words. Only a moan leaked out as I writhed in agony.
立て!
I slowly tried to get up. My body felt extremely heavy. I had trouble breathing, like there was something stuck in the back of my throat. I finally managed to lift myself up by pointing my hands and feet on the floor. Hashimoto took a step backwards. No, I was planning on charging at him. I released my hands from the ground and managed to make it to my feet. I need to stand up, move, and get out of here to meet up with Usami as soon as possible.
Bombonga!
Hashimoto pushed me down and delivered another kick to my side. Small fry, I continued jeering him. Maybe the reason he's flying off the handle so badly is because he just doesn't like my face.
Ora! Tatio!
Oh, I'll stand up. I'll stand up as many times as it takes. But the floor around me was shaky, so I couldn't find a steady foothold. I sprawled forward on the ground, then pushed backwards against my lower body. I planted my feet on the ground, straightened out at my knees, and finally rose to my feet. I used both legs to support my upper body, then... This time it was a punch. As my backside hit the floor once again, I stared up arrogantly at the little small fry. He was the one losing his cool. I chuckled a bit. The swaying of the floor grew more severe, and my ears started to hurt from lack of oxygen.
決めた。てめえは後で火炙りにしてやるよ。
Hashimoto looked down at me. I meant to insult him as best I could. Ugh, small fry. But I just ended up blurting out that pathetic line. After glaring down at me for a while, Hashimoto left. I heard the door shut, and I was left in silence. It took quite some time, but fighting against the pain and chills, I finally managed to get myself back up. After staggering to my feet, I headed for the door, muttering to myself, "This is nothing. Compared to the things Gonzo put me through, this had no chance of forcing me into submission." I grabbed the doorknob. Open! Of course, there was no way it was going to open. Darn it. Usami! Oh. This is really scary. The elevator shuttled silently upwards towards its destination. Inside, just as silently, Mal watched Haru with crossed arms. Haru was similarly watching him, waiting for an opening to attack. Mal was clearly getting a kick out of the situation. He had left Haru unrestrained, and was now simply watching her. His grin seemed to scoff. "If you've got something up your sleeve, show me." The elevator doors opened. Just beyond a dark, narrow passage, the bathed rooftop awaited her.
Kyousuke も町に来ているのだろう。
それがどうした？
An overcast sky loomed far above her. Nevertheless, the numerous lights on the streets below shone with enough brilliance to pierce the thick
こ
clouds
こ
of
で
smoke.
京介と出会ったらしいな。
Mal spoke as if ruminating on the distant past. He carried no weapons. He simply stood arrogantly before Haru.
何の真似だ魔王。
お前の死に場所を演出したいと思って
He said with a
な。本
smirk.
来なら外角放水路で殺したいところだが、この封鎖状況ではかなわない。
Haru shot Mal in angry defiant gaze. Mal continued on.
昔、京介とゲームをしてな。夜中まで遊んだものだ。ロールプレイングゲームとかいうジャンルらしい。
それがなんだ？
勇者と魔王が最後に戦うのがちょうどここのように誘惑のある場所なので。
His eyes held a content, distant
勇
gleam.
者は成長し、やがて魔王を倒すのだが、お前はどうかな。私の10年は復讐が全てだった。対象は国家であったり、浅井権蔵であったり様々だが、憎悪の中心にいるのはいつも宇佐美だった。
それは私も同じことだ。お前が私の人生を狂わせた。
私を殺すというのか。京介の兄である私を。
Haru's expression tensed as hesitation attacked him.
京介がかわいそうだと思わないか。あれは私を慕っていた。私が死ねばきっと少なからず悲しむことだろう。
この後に及んで命乞いか？
いいや。
He replied, shaking his
お
head.
前だって悪を犯そうとしていると教えてやりたかっただけだ。
そんなことは分かっている。
Mao's eyes flooded with enough hatred to nearly push them out of their
宇
sockets.
佐美どんな人間も最後まで自分の正しい世界に生きて死んでいくのだ
She knows that. Even as they speak, Haru's heart is ablaze in an attempt to justify her desire for Mao's destruction. Whenever one succumbs to violence, one turns to that beloved weakness known as justification. Whether the victim be a heavily armed terrorist or a helpless little girl, once a person has killed someone, he or she will always seek righteousness.
人はいつまでも同じ感情を抱いてはいられないという私も時にはお前を許そうなどと考えないでもなかった親は親子供は子供と当たり前の主張が両親に語りかける
This is a very cool CG. Xiaomi's on the left. Haru shared that particular experience. There had been sleepless nights in her life, nights where she considered releasing assassinate revenge in favor of a
だ
normal
が
life.
結局は憎しみが勝った父が言っていた春という少女を殺さなければ宇佐美に思い知らせてやれないと
The girl Haru was drawn to speak up.
私も結局はお前を追うことをやめられなかったバイオリンケースを開くたびに母の無念がよみがえる
Mao nodded in understanding. It was the most profound nod thus far. Profound nod thus far. Perhaps he was seeking some backward sort of reprieve. Just as he had hated Haru, he wanted Haru to hate him in return. In any case, Haru herself felt a twinge of relief upon hearing of Mao's hatred toward her. There was no rest for the wicked on this chain of revenge.
なあ宇佐美この世で最も長生きする感情は憎悪だと思わないかだからこそ何千年の昔から戦争が絶えないのだ
Haru didn't know whether she agreed or
もう
not.
一つくらいはある
Mao grinned. He knew what Haru was going to say. Hatred was not the only thing ruling Haru's heart. She could say without any hesitation that the past 10 years had been divided between her love for Kyousuke and her hatred for Mao.
京介か
Haru was shocked. For the first time, she saw something akin to warmth gleaming in Mao's eyes. If only for a brief moment, he returned to his role as a worrying older brother. It didn't take long, however, for Mao to regain his casual smirk.
安心しろお前を殺した後京介もあの世に送ってやるいつまでも二人仲良くやっているがいい
It was a hackneyed speech. What a sad man, she thought. What a sad man, she thought. Shamajimi Kyohei was a man of extraordinary talent and initiative, yet he had on to devoted entirely to a life of revenge. He would follow his own beliefs and stay true to his morality as a devil to the very end. Now pulled a
私
gun
を
from a
殺しに
suit.
来たというからには何かまた楽しい策を用意してきたんだろう
He scraped the ground as he stepped forward. She took a step backwards to keep a proper distance. It was obvious that a head-to-head contest of physical strength would not be in her favor. What now? What does Haru have in a situation that can provide her victory over Mao? Hand-to-hand was out of the question. She had no weapons. Perhaps there was something on the rooftop that could be used to distract Mao's attention. No, Mao would be extremely familiar with the entire building by now.
なやはり首を絞めて殺すか
Yes, this arrogance is Mao's greatest weakness. He could pull the trigger or call for his comrades at any time, yet he chooses to play with his adversary. Even so, it would still be difficult to escape the situation. Mao had cracked a tongue-in-cheek joke about setting the stage for her death, but the rooftop he brought her to was indeed a death trap with no escape. The bloodlust he exuded made it clear to Haru that this was no game. In contrast, Haru was completely unprepared. Haru was pressed backwards. Each step she took, Mao closed on her equally.
お前は高いところが得意だったようだな
Haru had at last been cornered by to the rooftop fence. She was unable to think of a means to counterattack. Urged on by gunpoint, she moved along the fence. Is this the end? Just then, she heard a roaring above her. It originated from a helicopter, probably belonging to a news station. There were no signs that they had noticed a commotion, nor was there any guarantee that they would come save her if they did. No, nevertheless, it was enough to distract Mao for a moment. He looked to the sky. Now? No, wait. It was an invitation. As if to confirm her suspicions, Mao spoke.
チャンスではなかったか
Mao suddenly charged her search for a means of escape. If they fought now, no one would be coming to save her this time. But the rooftop had no cover of any sort, and Mao was much faster than Haru. The only escape was the other side of the fence. A gust of wind tore across the rooftop. Haru just barely dodged Mal's grasp as she set foot on the edge of the rooftop. An air current from below pressed against her back.
まあ山王物産のビルから落ちて死ぬというのも悪くないかもしれんね。
Mal pointed the gun at her. His finger was on the trigger. The chill running down her back was not a result of the cold surge of air from the distant street below her. She gripped the fence tightly, but craned her neck around to look down. Haru felt that she had just discovered her last hope.
さらばだ。あの世で母親に会うがいい。
Haru twisted around to avoid the bullet. The bullet Mal fired did not hit its mark. However, she tripped over herself. She was knocked into the air. This would be the second time she was in this situation. Last time, when she was but a child, she was saved by a young boy, Kyousuke-kun. She frantically reached out, struggling desperately to grab onto something. All she found was snow. It melted fruitlessly in her hands. She screamed in a voice she could barely recognize as her own, praying for any possible help. Die! All other noise vanished from her ears. Haru was hit with the reality that she was falling. She looked at Mal. He was not laughing anymore. He stood with a solemn expression, like he was mourning the dead. Haru's line of sight switched from Mal's face to the endless dark sky. Her extended right arm managed to nab the edge of the rooftop. One arm alone, though, was insufficient to support her weight. After seeing Usami fall from the building, I came to check on the hostages. After all, we should be getting a call from the police soon. I take out my cell phone. I chose to use a cell phone for my negotiations with the police in order to make it harder for them to ascertain the location of the hostages. The police will know where I'm calling from. But for my last call, I was in the streets of the business district. For my next call, I would choose yet another different location.
そろそろ時間だな、警視正。
ああ、そのことなんだが、実はまだ決定が降りてこないんだ。
それは残念だ。こちらの誠意が足りなかったようだな。
I surveyed the room. None of the hostages seemed to show any signs of resistance. They were all slumped against the wall, looking gloomy. Well, no, not all. There was one who looked sprightly. He looked to be a young employee. He wore a bandage around his shoulder. His features seemed indicative of one that grew up in a nice environment, but his eyes spoke of a strong will and an intent to break through the storm. I see. He must be the one who saved those kids earlier.
そこで相談なんだが。
言ったはずだ。時間の延長は一切認めない。
分かっている。けれど、君も分かっていたのではないか。
He's a pro, alright.
現実的に8時間というのは短すぎるとは思わないか。総理以下、関係閣僚を招集するだけでもかなりの時間がかかったらしい。その上、これほど重大な決定を下すにはどう考えても時間が足りない。
それで
せめてあと5時間待ってもらえないだろうか。
5時間待つと何かいいことがあるのかな。
それだけあれば決議は降りるというのが警察の見解だ。
I clicked my tongue.
ノロマは罪だと思わないか。
待て、早まるな。
今から人質の一人を殺す。銃声をきちんと聞き届けるように。
落ち着け。人を殺して何になる。確かに我々は要求された時間に間に合わなかった。しかし君はプロだろ。
だったら
せめてもう少し時間をくれ。少しの猶予が君の計画にそれほど支障をきたすのか。君はそんな甘い算段を持って我々に挑戦してきたのか。
A magnificent negotiation trick. Appeal to the culprit's pride and force them to think objectively for a moment. Perhaps I really should have used Tokyo Yuki to take her father out of the picture.
我々がプロであるからこそ時間には正確でありたいのだよ。
I pointed my gun without hesitation. Pulled the trigger. A woman's brain splashed against the wall. The heavy atmosphere among the hostages grew a step heavier. The room was enveloped in screams. They were followed by yelling of the female employee's name, and finally wrapped up by subdued crying.
聞こえたか。
Superintendent Tokido was apparently too mortified to respond.
1時間後また連絡をもらおう。人質はあと10人がおる。言っている意味がわかるな。
I will kill one hostage every hour. I hung up the phone. Just then, someone yelled out at me.
おい！
It was the young employee from before. I was curious about what he was going to contribute, but unfortunately.
次は俺をやれ！なぜか弱い女性を！
He was filled with indignation, and there were tears in his eyes. I just returned a faint smile and left. Killing a courageous man like that is little effect. The most effective screams will always be the ones that come from a woman's lips. Naturally, the door Hashimoto used to leave was locked from the outside. I guess that means that I'm now locked up as a captive. How fitting for someone who is awaiting his public execution. Someone had confiscated the cell phone from my pocket. I can't call for help, and besides, Usami and Eiichi are the ones who really need help right now. Think. I look about the room. The door is the only exit. There isn't even a ventilation shaft. No wonder the room is so murky. I hugged the wall as I head for some junk in the corner. A bunch of comics and magazines were tossed around in a pile. Great. Nothing convenient, like a rock drill or something to break through the wall. A loaded machine gun would have been great too. Now think, darn it. How do I get out of here? How do I escape and save Usami and Eiichi? How can I get that door open? I scolded myself for getting chicken-hearted. I'm not a righteous superhero or anything like that. Looking back at the kind of life I led, I can't expect it to be saved by friends or anything of the sort. Now, think. I am the son of a Gonzo. My life may not have been decorated with good deeds or medals, but it also wasn't so easy as to let some small fry like Hashimoto do me in. Gonzo would roll over in his grave if he could see how pathetic I was right now. Cremation and burial are today, after all. His soul is still in this world. Wait, cremation? I exploded in a grin. Watch this, Gonzo. I'll make my escape a death-defying show, just for you. It should provide some entertainment during your flight to hell. I gathered up the magazines from the wooden table in the center of the room. I arranged the items in a lattice pattern, tearing or breaking them up as needed. I used anything that seemed burnable. Then I lit the pile of paper with the lighter I found on the table. Now, burn. I gradually added tinder until the fire grew in force. The material was dry, so all I had to do was watch it burn. The flames popped and crackled. The first signs of black smoke began to coat the ceiling. However, having no place to go, the smoke started creeping back down to the floor. The temperature of the room rose at a dash, and I could feel the heat against my face. Black smoke gradually filled the room as it swirled about, searching for an exit. More. Burn, choke, thicken. And then, when that door opens, bellow out in a gust. I coughed at the oppressive offense to my lungs. I couldn't even keep my eyes open. The air was starting to thin out. As the force of the fire weakened, the smoke grew ever thicker. crouched near the door. I beat at the door furiously as I fought for every breath. Hashimoto said that Eiichi is being held on the floor above this one. That naturally implies that there's a guard or two up there. They'll come rushing in to see what all the fuss is. And the second that door opens, they'll slaughter the lot. I continue to pound. I strained against the door to listen for footsteps. There was no one coming. Why? Water started pouring from my shut eyes. Get the heck over here! Why aren't they coming to see what's wrong? I beat the door with all my strength. My fear manifested as sweat rolled down my back. What if there's no one out there? What a comedic way to die. The fire behind me was waiting, and the cracking started to weaken and die down. I put my face to the bottom of the door in order to get at the bit of air seeping through. I can't afford so bad. My right arm won't move the way I want it to. I almost black out a few times. I can't give up. If I were to die here... I made a fist so tight my fingernails dug into my skin. What would happen to Usami? For what reason would Usai Gonzo have died? Dad, that's right. You died protecting me, Dad. I don't give anything, whether that's true or not. I'll be darned if I'm going to join you just yet. My body, covered in smoke, refused to continue operation, but my will adamantly refused to die. I wasn't even myself anymore. I had just become an animal, desperately beating at the door. I had to teach them a lesson. I had to teach them that, and me. Stepping on me and stepping on a gust beside Gonzo. Stepping on. I burned with hatred to fuel my anger. My memory was starting to get fuzzy. That was when I first realized the fresh air coming through my nose. My brain cells suddenly reactivated and my consciousness became clear. It felt like my body belonged to someone else. The right hand I was using to beat the door was now beating against air. Smoke bellowed out in gusts. The door was gone. It was finally open. I heard a jumble of footsteps. Met with fresh oxygen, the fire revived with crackling sparks. I prepared to pounce. I heard a flurry of shouting. Water. Put it out. It was the chirping of my prey. After standing up and checking the direction of the smoke, I subdued my reason. It had no place in the actions that would follow. I charged with all my strength. I saw 2 hyenas. They flinched at the sight of me. I swung my arm and sank my fist into their faces. I then dashed to the side of them, not even waiting for a scream. I made a beeline for the stairs. The kid who tried to grab my arm from behind was met with a sharp overhead kick. A dull, throbbing grazed my arms and legs on multiple occasions. Each time it did so, a scream accompanied it. I'm not particularly strong. These boys' resolves were just particularly weak. Brutality is the very element of a wounded beast. Once again, dark smoke ran along the ceiling in search of an exit. But this time, I chased after it. I raced the smoke to the first floor. I bumped into someone, and it turned into a struggle.
Omae!
My body instantly reacted to his voice. The air in my lungs fueled my burning hatred. Unabated coughs, unabated tears, unabated groans leaked out of us. The ceiling and the floor twisted and blurred. Headache, nausea, upset stomach, lack of oxygen. Burns on my throat, burns on my organs, chills, fever, infection, internal bleeding. My body used delirium to beg me for mercy as I infringed upon the small fry before me. If you want to kill me, then go ahead and try it. I'm not sure how many times I hit Hashimoto after that. But one thing is certain, to the bitter end, the one motivating force of mankind is and always will be anger. Get out of there, Kyousuke. Her body stung all over. Even attempting to move was enough to make her bones ache. Something chilly brushed against her face. Snow. It was snowing. Something chilly brushed against her face, and she felt it. That means she's still alive. Haru looked up at the sky. It still bore the deep darkness of night. The pain in her elbow was particularly strong. She would likely develop a nasty bruise there. Haru realized that she had fallen unconscious. But why was she even alive? She knew for a fact that she fell from the roof. Perhaps. She recalled the moment of her fall. When she glanced behind her at the edge of the roof, she saw a ray of hope. She remembered thinking that if she jumped toward it, she might be saved. Haru was now dangling in midair. She had avoided being splattered on the street by landing on a window washing platform. It was suspended no farther than 15 feet from the rooftop. Apparently, she had also somehow managed to land on her feet. Well, she always had been good with heights. Haru took a deep breath. Each heavy gust of wind struck fear into her heart. Just calm down, she told herself. The cable suspending the platform seemed to be quite strong. As long as she didn't panic, she was in no danger of falling. But still, how the heck am I supposed to get down from here? Mr. Somaya asked softly, despite the gun in his back.
これから皆で大型バスに乗っていただきます。当然今川先生も一緒です。
観光気分ではないのだがね。
ご安心を。10分もすれば目的地に到着します。
And that destination will be your new confinement area. It would be dangerous to keep the hostages in the same location the entire time. Seeing as the incident began at the snow building, the police will have done their homework on it. That likely wouldn't even be necessary, as they should be familiar with Himagawa's schedule for the day. Naturally, they'll have their sights set here first. If they airdropped a few commandos on the rooftop, we wouldn't come out of it unscathed.
それぐらいの距離なら歩いても行ける。
Himagawa was still right as rain.
さすがは CO2 削減を標榜している先生ですな。しかし外にはボートが充満しておりましてね。私の命令も聞かない血気盛んな若者がいるかもしれませんが、それでもよろしいですか？
That's not a lie, as the rioting out there was never really any of my concern. All I did was order them to play to their heart's content. I wouldn't even be able to guarantee my own safety out there. For all I knew, I'd be shot dead by some kid on crack cocaine.
お分かりですね。では出発しましょう。
Kyousuke! おい、Kyousuke!
My fists hurt.
Kyousukeったら!
Heavy, irritated breathing bothered my ear. Huh? Oh, Hichi? You okay?
うちじゃねえけどな。なんつうの、満身創痍ってやつ。
Where's everyone else?
みんな逃げたよ。火事だから。
I smelled something burning. Fire? Oh, yeah. I did that, didn't I? I had Hashimoto pinned down to the ground. He was moaning, and his face was swollen with something awful. After the adrenaline rush wore off, my entire body started screaming. I had lost nearly all sensation in the arm I used to pummel Hashimoto.
おい、京介。逃げるぞ。
Eiichi stood beside me in tatters.
奴らがまた現れる前に辛かろうぜ。
His legs were wobbly. He must have taken quite the beating. Yeah, Hashimoto said there's a way out through this club.
ああ、そうだよ。だから急げっての。火に巻かれるぞ。
You wouldn't happen to know where my cell phone is, would you?
ん？携帯？知らねえよ。んなもんまた買えよ。ボンボンだろ。
I can understand why Ichi is so worked up. The conflagration downstairs had already spread to this floor.
ああ、急げよ。出られなくなっちまうぞ。
I guess the police won't be able to use this route either if the building goes up in flames. Give me your cell phone.
俺もねえよ。こいつらに取られちまった。
Guess I'll just grab one from Hashimoto then.
あ、京介。なんだよてめえ。
Usami's number is 090. Perfect. I hate myself for how well I remembered it.
ちょっと落ち着けて。いや、お前の考えてることは俺にはわかるです、さすがに。
Yeah, he has stuck with me a lot. God knows why.
無茶すんなって。こいつらみんな狂ってんだぞ。つうかおめえ、俺以上にボロボロじゃねえか。
Apparently, like really, truly. What? Usami?
あ、繋がった。
Huh?
自分携帯電話とか持つの初めてでして、なんだかドキドキしますね。マイ携帯は。
What? Did she hold on to her cell phone
特に用事はないです。
after falling
つな
down?
がるかなとドキドキしたかっただけです。ですからちょっとだけでよろしいんですがね。
I don't know. That morning, maybe? If we went to the shrine around 4 or 5, it might work out.
決まりですね。
Wait. What's decided?
要は私を選べってことです。
Oh, just get out of here. Huh?
はい？
Where's the outfit?
してるじゃないですか。
That's a jogging suit.
おめかしじゃないですか。
To my father in prison. I'm sorry. Even though she's the daughter of your enemy, Ichi, you go on, get out of here. I'm covering Ichi with my face camera. I reached into Hashimoto's breast pocket as he lay unconscious. Get rested. He feels something hard and rectangular. Alright, found his cell phone.
ホスケよ。なんで？わけわかんねえよてめえ。今なら逃げられるんだぞ。
Yep.
警察に任せておけって。俺たちみたいなガキがどうにかできる話じゃねえって。
You're probably right. But the police are caught in one of Mao's trademark stalemates right now.
女か。そんなに女が大事なのか。
That's not it.
分かったよ。じゃあ俺も。
No thanks. You're useless. You almost slow me down. I ended up overstating it a bit. Sorry, I meant to say that you should get out there and go straight to the police. You'll be dying to get any information about what's going on here.
でもよ。
Just shut up and get going already. There was a familiar gun laying on the ground. Presumably, it was the one Hashimoto had been carrying. I picked it up and pointed it at Ichi.
しょうがねえやつだな。
Sorry, man.
分かった。
He spoke solemnly.
次の部活を楽しみにしておくよ。
Ichi ran to the door. I should get out of here too before I become smoked meat. Hashimoto was coming too. I smacked him across the cheek. You should probably get the heck out of here if you don't want to die. Forcing my protesting body back up to my feet, I dash outside. Haru heard the sound of an engine from the distant streets below. It looked like it could be a bus. The large vehicle's cabin lights were on, and it sat idling in front of the Tenno building. The lights betrayed the silhouettes of nearby people as they boarded the bus in the line. Those must be the hostages. She should make sure to note where this bus drives hostages. Her cell phone suddenly rang. The surprise almost made her slip and fall. The platform shook in protest.
浅井さん。
That stayed in her pocket after she fell onto the platform. She was overcome with emotion over his familiar voice. Her eyes began to tear up. She asked if she was alright. He asked if she was alright.
変な電話番号からかかってきましたが。
He must have had like a zip pocket, I guess. He told her not to worry about it. Where are you right now? He asked in a deep
それ
voice.
がうまく説明するのが難しいんですが。
Haru briefed Kyousuke on the current situation. She told him about falling from the roof and how she had survived by jumping to a window cleaning gondola. She also made sure to add that the gondola was now a bit shaky.
さっきから窓ガラスを破ろうとしてるんですが、どうにも刺激でした。
He responded with a brief question. Which floor?
多分48か7階のあたりではないかと。
Got it. His voice left her again after one last short statement. Just sit tight. She found herself dumbstruck by the time the call ended. Don't tell me. He's coming to rescue me? Just then, the platform shook violently. One of the cables supporting it made a nasty groan. It must be the result of the impact from Haru's fall. Scary. Moving my way along the streets to the Tenno building. I drove my battered body forward one step at a time. My right hand held Hashimoto's unwieldy gun. Unlike him, though, I had a bit of experience with firearms. As long as I was within point-blank range, I'm confident I wouldn't make the critical mistakes he did. Central Boulevard was enveloped in silence. I guess everyone had finally gotten tired of rioting. There were quite a few survivors here and there. A woman peeking out of an upper-story window immediately closed the curtain upon meeting my eyes. I guess that sums up my appearance at the moment.
坊ちゃんじゃないですか。
A number of men suddenly appeared from a dark alley. They were yakuza from Soniyama Group. Well, their office is located in the Central Boulevard, so I suppose it shouldn't come as a surprise that they get wrapped up in it. Good to see you safe. You're safe. Good to see you're safe. They wore an assortment of different weapons and apparel. Among them was a shirtless man holding a sword and a man in a suit with sunglasses and a gun.
いやー、坊ちゃんこそ災難でしたね。
Even Horide was unique in a sense, retaining his usual smile in the face of this situation.
いやね、自分らも今まではやられる一方だったんですがね、さすがにガキは寝る時間じゃないですか。そろそろ反撃に出ようかと思ってたところなんです。
I see.
何せ親衛会のゴミどもまでガキに加担してるって話じゃないですか。たく親父が許してやった恩を忘れてくれちゃったな。
He had a cruel smile on his face. I somehow doubt that Horide is capable of death. Looks like we won't be making it to Dad's funeral.
そこですわ。親父の死に目に会えなかったばかりか、
葬式にも顔を出せねえとあっては松代までの恥ってやつですけどね。
I shook my head. Zygonzo doesn't need some formal funeral. The look in Horibe's eyes changed. He's probably really ticked off right now. Right about now? In fact, I know he is. The beast is wailing in anger. Can you hear him? I don't need a funeral. Just get out there and slaughter all who would oppose me. Well, Horibe? Can you hear him? Horibe looked at me appraisingly for a moment, then opened the way. I continued my march onwards.
Aniki, どうしたんです？
いけねえいけねえ、この堀部ついぶるっちまったよ。
はい？
一瞬親父が地獄から帰ってきたかと思ったぜ。ありゃやっぱ怪物の息子よ。
I made my way through the quiet streets of Central Boulevard. My cough continued unabated. Pain coursed through my entire body again, and nausea and chills threatened to bring my feet to a halt. I staggered unsteadily through the night. There was a boy sleeping at the side of the road. After he awoke and slowly came to his feet, his eyes first went to my face, then to the gun I was holding. And then he moved off the road. I spotted a few groups of people on foot, and a few people on bikes or motorcycles that seemed to be on the lookout. None of them tried to stop me, presumably because I never tried to hide or run away. Cars would come to a stop, but soon continue on their way. Mobs on the street would send me glares, but then just pucker up their brows in disgust. Covered in soot, dirt, and blood, no one stood in my way. The ground shook before my eyes. The lights seemed to dance and warp in the air. I just continued forward. I was still a long ways away from losing consciousness. Some passion drove me on towards Sanoshi Q. I had no idea whether it was love or hatred. I merely prayed to the devil that what little strength I had left wouldn't leave me. At least, not until I get there. One of the four cables supporting the platform had snapped. After a jarring metallic sound, the platform inclined at a slant. The tilt gradually worsened as time passed. The bolt fastening the cable closest to the building was beginning to come loose as well. She tried to jam it back in, but without the proper tools, there was nothing she could do. If the second cable snaps, it's all over. The gondola swayed about in the air like a swing, and the footing became precarious. Haru beat against the window pane. She put as much strength into it as possible without losing her footing. Regretfully, the glass was ineffective. Were there any tools she could use to break through the thick glass? Something hard or sharp? No, there was nothing. Haru almost fell off the platform in panic. The knowledge that the more panicked she became, the more the platform would shake did nothing to stop her trembling legs. I made it! I looked up at the skyscraper. The sky was dark, and I could not spot the platform I saw me swiftly. Wait a second, this is rather odd. Weren't the hostages being kept in this building? That should mean the terrorists are holed up in there too. But despite that, it almost felt like a ghost building. At any rate, this isn't the time for hesitation. I need to get inside. The only thing roaming the entrance was silence. I dragged my feet along the floor, searching for an elevator. Is there really no one here? I suddenly stilled my breath and came to a halt. I could see the outlines of a person under the emergency lighting, standing out in the darkness. He held a large black gun at the ready. He was speaking to the darkness in English. I hid behind a large pillar and assessed the situation. The man was planted in front of the elevator hall, of all places. He stood straight up and at attention without moving an inch. A minute passed with no change in the situation. What should I do? Should I launch an attack? No, that would be entirely in vain. Judging from his posture and equipment, he's a pro. Maybe I could distract him. I could use the ult to throw a stone and wait for him to check it out, then make a break for the goal. No, I'm not sure how many elevators there are, but there's no guarantee that one will conveniently be stopped at the first floor. I can't even be sure that they're running at all. So does that mean I should just wait until he leaves? That seems to be the smartest move. It seems like the terrorists have abandoned the space, though I couldn't tell you why. As long as I wait patiently, he's bound to rendezvous with his comrades at some point. Then again, the light indicating the emergency exit right to my left was illuminated. A stupid idea crossed my mind. I caught a glimpse of the handrail to a staircase just beyond the emergency exit door. It really was an incredibly, splendidly stupid idea. My entire body was just aching, screaming at me to go on instead of just stay still. Sami could be anxiously awaiting my help as I sit there. As I sit here, and the more I sit, the more my strength leaves me. Resting makes me want to fall asleep. And on the other hand, moving forward fills me with energy. Yes, that's the way it should be. Someone howls into my ear. Finding something reassuring in that advice, I head toward the emergency exit that time. Of course, I can just take the stairs to the 47th floor. Unable to contain herself, Haru dialed him on her cell phone. What is it? He bluntly replied. Inside the building. She could feel the ground shaking beneath her. If they are, then they're mighty understaffed at the moment. That's right. She had just seen a bus loading the hostages a short while ago. Thus, there's no reason to guard this building anymore. If she just waits a little longer, help will arrive. It's me. Are they not operating? Come to think of it, she recalls seeing all the lights in the building suddenly turn off. It's also possible that they left a lookout here. As she was pondering the possibility, Kyousuke spoke up in a deep voice. Are you alright? Just then, her ear was blasted by a clattering sound from her phone. It was soon accompanied by the rattle of the wind. She heard a groan. Oddly enough, what immediately followed was a calm response. She could fall any minute. Haru was completely in the dark about Kyousuke's current situation. She was overcome with anxiety. Do you know which side of the building you're on? That was the most she could say. Kyousuke paused for a moment before voicing confirmation. He followed it up with a deep voice. I'll be there in 10. She could guess that Kyousuke was injured, but what was sparking all that bravado? The call ended. The only sound now was whistling of the wind. He's not planning on climbing the stairs all the way from the first floor, is he? Haru didn't understand. He was supposed to be a cleverer man than that, and he had never once uttered a word about loving her. Why? Nevertheless, her chest was ablaze with warmth and love. I stepped through the darkness. The emergency light served as my only beacon. I climbed the stairs one by one. I forced my laden feet into action. My consciousness seemed to drift into a state between waking and sleeping. But despite this twilight state, there was still one thing I had control over. It was almost like a special consciousness, one that had been stored away for emergencies. It urged me repeatedly, upwards and onwards. Rather, it didn't urge me. It seemed more to pull me along, as if it were a separate entity. But regardless whether it urged or pulled, it was commanding that time to move as fast as possible. There wasn't much time left. I've lost count of how many times I've had to feel my soles off the ground against gravity's heavy pull. My thighs are probably swollen like a balloon. Passing areas that look identical to each other over and over only serve to aggravate my dizziness. I focus all strength into my legs as I fight off the nausea. I think I've cleared 10 floors. Just 10. I'll need to repeat what I've done nearly 4 more times. It's like I lost a bet or something. Darn you, Usami. I had just never reunited with you. Multiple times now I have nearly tripped over my own feet and tumbled down the stairs. I lean against the wall and almost pass out, then and there. This is more than just drowsiness. This is a still darkness trying to envelop my entire head. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a number written on the wall. 26. Arrgh. I'm still just on the 26th floor. I couldn't hold back my groans as they pierced the darkness. My teeth chattered from the harsh chills. Still, I hadn't been brought to my knees just yet. Even if it was just barely, I was still standing. I don't need anyone's help. Setting my sights on the staircase landing above me, I set out once more. The tilt grew steeper, its shift heralded by the creaking of twisted metal. How much longer would it hold up? The tension, cooperating with that terrifying force called gravity, had pulled sweat across Haru's face. The fear that any subtle movements could upset the balance of the gondola, however, erased any thoughts of lifting it away. She simply stood and watched the window, picturing the moment that she would show up on the other side. Think. Is there anything that she can do in this situation? Sometimes Haru doubted whether or not she even had the right to be loved like Kyousuke. Has he really forgiven her? After all, the one who brought to select the family, Haru was her very own father. Was it acceptable for her to just sit and stare, awaiting her prince like some damsel in distress? Haru calmly looked over at the cable that was on the verge of snapping off. What would happen if it snapped? Her horizontal footing would become vertical. The platform's main face would be unusable, sitting only. Haru carefully made her way to the front of the platform, then placed her foot upon the bar that housed the cable mount. She didn't know if there would be any point to it. If it came down to just the 2 cables, the platform wouldn't last much longer anyway. It would only delay the inevitable. No, he said he'd be here in 10 minutes. She hadn't believed in him. Haru took a deep breath and decided to wait for her savior. What floor am I on now, I wonder? God knows how many steps I've gone up by now. The steps, even the flat landing, seem to twist and grind. It's hot. I feel like I'm burning alive. An incessant wheezing is coming from my lungs and throat. What am I still lazing around here for? Hurry. Move. Step. Up. Forward. Darn the soles of my shoes. They refuse to leave the ground as if they're glued there. My side is met with a stabbing pain whenever I try to breathe. I'm alone. Alone in an artificial construct with no lights and stagnant air. Not even moonlight is permitted to shine in here. But hey, that's what you get when your god is fickle and worthless. Good thing I'm not asking for his help. Solitude makes a person stronger. And if the woman you must protect lies at the end of that solitude, all the better. If You think you can stop me? Go ahead and try. There's no room for heaven on this wayward soul's stairway to glory. The howl of a beast tore at my eardrums. It was my voice. It was his Gonzo's voice. The turbidity of my consciousness forced me to mistake my own voice. The monster of fear that had pervaded my entire being roared out. Move forward. Shoulder the karma of your mother, who died squashed like a worm. Bear the sadness of your brother, who went mad with revenge. And go forth to your enemy's daughter. My head bumped into something. It was a hard wall of iron. I tried pushing against it, but it didn't budge an inch. My fingers started to twitch. My chest was scorched by an inferno of vexation. I looked up at the wall. 46-4 was painted on it. It was a fire shutter. The thick wall that had once saved us now served as an obstacle blocking my path. Clenching my teeth, I rose to my feet. Could something this stupid really be happening? It's just a little further. There are only 1 or 2 floors to go. There must be some other way to the upper floors. Dragging along my beaten legs and spirit, I searched the 46th floor. I walked like the dead. It's kind of late, but maybe I should just use the elevator. The terrorists might be gone now. No. Once I got in front of the elevator, I realized something. It's still in operation. There'd be no need to guard an elevator that doesn't work. That means there might still be armed men on the first floor. If I call the elevator to this floor, they'll no doubt find it suspicious and come to check it out. I'll need to find another way. Like a freight elevator, or a dumb waiter, or something like that. Like a ventilation shaft big enough for a person to fit through. Like anything at all. Like some hidden secret passage. Or a hole that the terrorists blew in the floor. Is there anything at all to get me started? Search. It's already well past the 10 minutes I promised. Will I be breaking yet another promise? Usami! I bet she's placed her faith in me, even now. And yet, God darn it!
次こそ誠意ある回答をもらえるんだろうな。
After exactly 1 hour, I received another call from the police. I'm well aware that Superintendent Tokita is in a tough position. The government and police force are going to want to retain their firm position on this. And that, of course, means they have no intention of allowing the release of prisoners. That said, it's much too convenient to expect me to release the hostages and surrender without seeing proof that at least some of the prisoners have been released. The government probably figures that all they need to do is fire enough cops to correspond to the number of casualties and everything will turn out fine. However, Superintendent Tokita's next words completely overturned my expectations.
君の要求を政府は部分的に飲むと決定が下った。
I laughed through my nose.
交渉人にはフェイクという戦術があるそうだが。
にわかには信じがたいだろう。しかしこれは事実だ。我々は人命尊重の観点から君たち武装グループの要求を条件付きで認めることにした。
It took nearly 5 hours less than I thought it would. Honestly, I wasn't sure how probable the odds were of the government accepting my demands until I actually put it into action. It just goes to show you how valuable Imagawa's life is. Perhaps it's a trap.
条件とは？
まず君が指名した全ての人間を釈放することは認められない。
Very good.
特に国内過激派の主格、過去に政府転覆を企てた。
He then went on to list the names I had prepared as dummies one by one. I didn't care about any of those people to begin with. I only included them because I figured they could work as leverage in my negotiations with the police.
ふざけた条件だな。
To be truthful, I wanted to give the green light right away, but if I jumped at the offer, they would find it suspicious. I should pretend to be angry, but also show a willingness for compromise.
ということは、残ったのは
筧陽介、南田公江、鮫島利勝の3名だ。
ふざけるな。たったの3人だと。
As expected, my father made the list. After all, though there was a time he was rumored to be part of an extremist faction, he's not the real deal. In reality, he's just a good-natured death row inmate with absolutely no political ideals.
これでも最大限の譲歩だとは思わないか？
Indeed I do. It's fantastic.
断れば武力解決も辞さないというわけだな。
最大限の譲歩と言っただろう。これがいかに常識を逸脱した決断か察してもらえないだろうか。
I gave the nod for the time being.
回答は後回しにして他の条件を聞こう。
無論人質の解放、封鎖区域でのボートの沈静化、そして
我々の投降というわけだな。
If we were judged accordingly to Japanese law, it would without a doubt result in the death penalty.
では囚人の身柄についてだな。
I gave details on how the prisoners should be escorted out of the country. They are to be airlifted to Komura near the Japanese coast and then shipped to North Korea by sea. It's rather similar to my arms smuggling route. I've arranged for a comrade of mine to pick up my dad after the ship gets out of Japanese waters.
了解した。
Huh?
それではこの取引は成立したと考えていいのかな？
5分後にかけ直す。
I then hung up the phone. In any case, the answer I will give in 5 minutes has already been decided. I couldn't suppress my emotions. I won. It was a grand sense of fulfillment. Father. Just as Haru had predicted, the cable had ruthlessly snapped. The only thing at her feet now was a single bar. The number of cables supporting her weight had dwindled down to 2, and they groaned incessantly under the stress. Haru had to balance herself constantly as if she were part of some deathly circus. That alone was a great difficulty. It was only compounded each time the gondola, or rather, what was left of it, shook wildly. The wind played pranks on her as she tried to straighten herself up. She was out of time. The cables wouldn't hold much longer. The sounds they made as they lay on the verge of snapping were like the shrieks of the Reaper.
Kyousuke.
Haru called his name in fragmented breaths. There was no sign of anyone on the other side of the window. The only thing visible there was her reflection, pale from fear. She gritted her teeth and withstood the fear as long as she could, but there was no sign that her circumstances would improve. It was so cold. Snow began to fall once more. In this situation, even the nearly weightless snow was a highly unwelcome guest to this platform. What should I do? She could literally hear her heart pounding. Her legs started to rattle. Courage, the very defining trait of a hero, gradually started to diffuse away from her into the vast depths below. She timidly looked upwards. 2 cables. They played the role of Haru's lifeline. But very soon the curtain would be coming down, and their act would come to an end. I'm sorry, Kyousuke-kun. In the end, she decided to think of him. She didn't want to spend her final moments trembling in fear. He would always complain that she was disgusting, but when all was said and done, he always found a time for her. He remembered the cheesy little promise they made when they were kids. He was the one that had brought spring to her desolate life. It was her feelings for him that rescued her from drowning completely in a notion of vengeance.
バイオリン、もう一度くらい。
She wanted to play for his sake, if not hers. And the moment of truth suddenly visited upon her. Her feet felt no pressure. Her heart leapt from her throat. Her blood began to flow backwards. She let out a pathetic scream. She reached for the window in a last stubborn attempt. It was in vain. The glass was just too smooth. She shut her eyes in despair. Suddenly, the sound of glass breaking interrupted the darkness. Good, so he did come to save me. Only he was too late. Haru was already in midair. Gravity had invited her into death's maw. Her consciousness became intermittent and eventually cut off. At the very end, she thought she heard Kyousuke screaming. The idea that she had caused that scream left her final moments filled with regret. That was when Haru first noticed something calling her. Her brain, after recognizing itself as dead, reactivated the stimulus. Then how revitalized cells attempted to revive their functions as a whole. She felt a firm pressure in the area between her chest and stomach. It seemed to squeeze her. There was a slight warmth to it, even. Its strength was bestial, and the whole sensation seemed to be a proclamation that whatever force had gripped her would not release its quarry. Haru! Her name was called again. This time, it was right next to her ears. Her body reacted to the heated breath. The voice was a man's. The only man who had ever said her name like that was her late father. Thus, this place must be hell. Open your eyes! But what was this burning sensation? It felt similar to when he held her. She didn't care if it was merely a dream. Haru decided to open her eyes. Just maybe. Right, something like this had happened once before. The sky that day had burned with the glow of sunset. She had dropped her precious pocket watch, something her mother had given her, but her life had been spared. The boy had held on to her firmly, as if to protect her. It was exactly like this. How did you survive? What? She could clearly feel his breath on her back. The ragged yet gentle breathing belonged to the young boy from 10 years ago. Naturally, though, he was no longer the irreverent lad he once was. He's been a real handful, you know that? Her tears flowed without end. Yeah, it was a close one, alright. Guns have this thing called a safety. If I had spent just a little more time fumbling around with it, you would have been a goner. I shot out the window. She had no recollection of her arm being grabbed at the moment of the fall. But regardless, here she was inside the building, on the safety of solid ground. Oh! Wait, how much did she fall? That was no hallucination. You really did come falling down. Come falling down? Kyousuke went on to explain. This is the 46th floor. I couldn't go any higher because of the fire shutter, so I decided to stay here and look around the building for the gondola you were on. You following me? Her head was still a little foggy. The droning of his voice seemed to envelop her in a sort of sugary sensation. Okay, hair is crazy long, so catching you the moment you fell was a piece of cake. There's no way it could be as simple as he said. Haru was on either the 47th or 48th floor. The distance from there to here would have to be 10 feet at the absolute minimum. Taking into account her weight and the speed of the fall, no human being could just catch that and walk away perfectly fine. She looked over to the window. The window frame was about 3 feet from the ground. He must have braced his lower body against that space. Otherwise, he would have gone tumbling over the edge along with her. You hung on to the bitter end, huh? You were sticking to that window like a frog. He chuckled. Right. He was able to catch her because she had fallen so close to the window. You don't need to thank me. Just then, she felt the strength leave Kyousuke's arms. He had expended the last of his energy. One look at his soot-stained clothes and slashed fingers was enough to tell the story of the hardships he must have faced. Really, you don't. No. His voice grew weaker. Just let me hear your violin one more. Kyousuke went still after that. He was still breathing, he just lost consciousness. Haru began to squirm, but on the other end, she thought it might be nice to stay like this a little longer. How wonderful would it be to just forget everything else and fall asleep like this? Just a little longer, she thought. She would lie just a little longer in the arms of the man who nearly threw his life away to save her. Oh. Haru is alive. She survived. Bye.